Hey folks. Yeah, thanks for that introduction there, Rick. My name's Matthew Heels. That introduction kind of summarizes everything. But my talk today is about Team Topiary. So there's a few terms I'm probably going to be using. I just want to kind of explain what they mean to me and what they mean through this talk. So if you hear me use the word team, that means the people who make games, the people in this room. If you hear me use the word organization, that's the processes and structures we put around your team so that they can make games. And if I use the word studio, that's everything. That's the business, that's the organization, that's the team, that's your studio. Now, one of the things I'll point out that a team or studio of one is still a team and a studio. So what I have to say here is applicable to one person, 3 people, 10 people, 100 people. And that's where my experience in making games comes from. Either by myself with those mods in Neverwinter back in the day, where I would put a link to a download on a forum and a PayPal link where if anyone wanted to throw me money, that's cool. All the way to being a feature producer on The Division 2 and my feature being on the E3 main stage, managing teams across 3 countries to deliver features. All of these teaching moments, and I'm hoping to bring some of that things that I've learnt to you all here today. So let's start with that. Lessons I've learnt from leading and working with teams. People want to be suitably challenged. They don't want to be asked to do menial work or underutilized. They don't want to do things that they're unprepared for or unsupported in. And learning is different to unachievable expectations. People want to improve. People want to get better at what they do. That's why we're all here for the last couple of days. They want to gain new skills that are related or adjacent to their main role. And what a business sees as improvement or necessary skills may not match what the individual team member is looking for. And people want to achieve and celebrate goals together. This can be an individual goal that's recognized by the team. It could be a shared achievement, like a milestone or a launch of a game. But this is all centered on the coming together and acknowledgement of not just what you've done, but where you are and who you are with. Now, what is growth? That's what we're talking about. How do you grow your team? Now, too often, the word growth is paired with the business association. So it's a key metric for investors or publishers. It's a good buzzword that can be used as shorthand for making money or adding headcount. But I really want us as game developers to reclaim this word and repurpose it for us as developers. Growth is not just a business strength position. Growth is needed before the decision to expand. You can't repot a plant if it's staying the same size. Growth indicates your team's strengths. Growth is not just adding people. It can be, but growing is improving your team, and growing is cultivating belonging. The big thing that I want everyone to have a think about and as a takeaway is growth is retention. Growth is about keeping people in your team and, importantly to me, in games development. The fact that I've only been making games for about 14 years and I'm considered a veteran is a sad and worrying thing to me. The fact that veteran status is after 8 years in our industry, 10 years now, that scares me as a person who cares about the people who make games, and it really worries me about the future health of where we'll be as an industry in the future. That's why it's kind of important to me. So what cools do, what cools? Cool tools. My brain sometimes works like that. I hope you think this stuff is cool like I do. What tools do you need? So when you're gardening, you need the right tools for the right job. And that's the same for team growth. So open and reciprocal honesty when you're talking with your team, even if that's talking to yourself. Mutual trust. This is developed, earned, and worked on. Clear and regular communication. It's all well to be honest and trust each other, but if you're not constantly working with one another and communicating this, it all kind of falls apart. And importantly, if you're a team leader doesn't always mean boss, but it often does. Just be aware and acknowledge any power imbalances in the relationship that could impact these sort of discussions you have with your team around growth. This one's the big takeaway here at the start. What growth is that you're building and maintaining a relationship. Whether that's a relationship between yourself and your team, relationship with you and yourself, or the team and the individual with your studio and the business itself. So all of these tools are all focused on how to build and maintain a relationship, like Topiary. Topiary is the art and craft of growing and nurturing plant growth. So I like a good metaphor. All of these three ways of growing are all going to be through that lens of Topiary and different styles of how that we can train and work with plants to make them grow in the way that we'd like to see and the way that they indicate to us that they'd like to grow. Now, I'm the studio manager at Lumi Interactive, and we currently are working on a game called Kinda World. It is a cozy, lo-fi mobile game that you can download now on all your mobiles, and it deals with emotional well-being. So I'm going to be helped in my talk with some of the NPCs you'll meet along the way, so they'll pop up in the talk as we talk about our team. So, one style of growth, growing up. This I like to refer to as the trellis style. It helps strengthen the trunk of your tree. Now, a trellis is an open framework that is used to support and display climbing plants. Things that go vertically up, that can go out to the sides a little bit, but you're mainly trying to focus on the vertical growth of the plant. What is a trunk? The trunk's used to identify plants and trees. It can look and act different from top to bottom, but it can also show how a tree has grown and changed over time. This sort of style is often what a lot of studios have, and it's also a good place to start with if you're just starting out on a growth-centered development or individual development of your team. So the trellis style. It comes with some pros. There's lots of knowledge in the games industry and the wider business, so lots of resources to refer to. It's easy to implement because it is typically just policy that is just followed out and to the T. And because of that, it can be clearly communicated to everyone so everyone knows what is involved. However, in my experience, it can be inconsistent across studios and industry. A lead programmer at one place may mean something totally different at another, let alone when you're talking about international development. It relies often on your team size or your business strength expanding at a similar rate as the people in your team, particularly if you tie lead to leading people. You can't lead people if you don't have the people in your team to lead. So, let's have a look at a case study. I want you all to meet Fern. Fern's a member of our team and is really dependable. I can turn to Fern and they really deliver on whatever I'm asked for. And they're someone that not just I as a producer, as a studio manager, can rely on, but also the people around. In our regular sort of catch-ups, ferns come to me and they've said this: I want to take on a more impactful role. I want to be part of the decision-making and maybe even a public face for our game. I think my team would benefit from a leader. Now, a leader does not have to be someone who is approving holidays, doing one-to-ones. A leader is someone who advocates for a discipline or a department. So let's have a look at what Fern's motivations might be here. They're looking for visible progression in their career. They want to be involved in making decisions. They want that recognition from their colleagues and their industry of that progress, and they want to lead people. So what can we work with Fern on? Title advancement, that one's an easy one. The thing that I want to point out here and make clear is that title advancement should be linked to roles and responsibility within your team. It needs to make sense to you, to Fern, as well as the greater team as well. A good example of this is I see a lot of studios that have 3 people, 4 people, and everyone's a lead. What does that really mean to you, your team, if everyone's a lead? Adding additional responsibility for Fern. We can look at management. Can we have them taking on additional responsibility for that team leadership? Can they do that holiday and leave considerations? Can they work with your producers or project managers on workload management for their team? Can they be running the one-to-ones? What sort of areas of personnel management can you divest to Fern? What about external groups? Are there networking groups in the industry or events that they can represent you or the studio at? That's putting them as the public face of your group, of your team. It doesn't always have to be about selling your game. Sometimes it's about this conference, coming and sharing your expertise and building that for the community that you're in. And what about public avenues for contribution? Can you sponsor Fern for an industry talk or a conference? What about journals? Is there something that Fern can write a manuscript on and get published and peer reviewed? And a really simple one, what about your studio blog? Do you have one? It's a website. It's a link on your social medias where Fern can really speak about what they do and what the team does. Now, what about us as an organization, the actual structures around them? We can do department structuring. Do you have a lead for each department? Again, that can just be someone who speaks to what that department needs and wants in planning or studio leadership discussions. Are there production or project manager sort of responsibilities that you can delegate? I like to get somebody who wants to test this thing to chase work from other people in their team. I don't have to remind people about Jira. My team does it for me. What about running and planning reviews? This is a really good step to help build that leadership quality of, hey, we're going to review the game, we're going to look at this, I'll organize the meeting, and I'm going to run that review and report those findings from the review to the greater team. And then from that sort of more HR, person and culture sort of aspect, what about progression matrices? So these are the typical junior, intermediate, senior to lead that a lot of studios have. Sometimes they're called gradings. So you might see, QA Analyst 1, QA Analyst 2. Now, to me, I might not know what that is, but to those studios, that means something very specific. And the point I want to make here is that if you are looking at progression matrices, make sure you identify the differences in the responsibilities. Not just the job they do, but the responsibilities of each of those levels. And make sure you clarify and outline what needs to be demonstrated to make the next step up. It's all well and good to have a ladder, but if you're not teaching your team how to use it, how can you expect them to climb it? So, growing out, that's lateral growing. This is a pruning style, I like to refer to it as. It's about expanding the branches. So what is pruning? Pruning is not just chopping off things. It's about selective choices to help shape growth. So it's more about opportunities you nurture or support rather than the ones you remove. And what are branches and why do I like this for this type of growth style? Branches grow from the trunk, your studio, your main hierarchies. They transport important nutrients across the plant and they help support the leaves. They aid in expanding the plant while also supporting its own growth outwards. So some pros. It shows active engagement in the wants and needs of your team. You're actually asking them how they want to grow, working with them to foster that growth. And it builds additional skills and knowledge bases for your team. Some cons. It's easy to say, but challenging to action. It's all great to say, yeah, designer, we'd really like you to become a UI designer. But actually having the actions to back that up is the difficult next step. It also relies on team members to identify and communicate those as well. There are ways to work with your team to get that information, but if you have somebody who's not as forthcoming, this can be one of the obstacles to overcome. So this is Luna. She is a master of their craft. And if there's something that people don't know, I'm going to give that work to Luna, and Luna's going to either come back with the information for us to make a decision or with the thing working already. I can always turn to Luna to answer any questions, so can the team. In fact, some people in the industry message Luna on social media and ask questions about how to do the thing in their field. So Luna comes to me and says, I want to know everything about my field, and I want to bring that knowledge to my teammates. I want to be the person anyone can call on to help out with this speciality or subject matter. So the motivation's here for Luna. They want to be a master of their craft. She wants to expand her skill set, and then she wants to share that information. And the important thing here is expertise is what is important for Luna. So what can we work with Luna on? We can identify those areas of expertise. We can work with Luna. If Luna is a tech artist and says, I really want to do VFX, great. If Luna is a tech artist and knows tech artists can do pretty much anything that a wizard can do, maybe that's a little bit harder, but we can work with Luna to talk about what that is by asking questions about what is important to Luna, what is fun, what is enjoyable, and why do they want to develop this, and what is their motivator there. Another way, actually, on this one, maybe you as a studio know you've got a skill deficit somewhere. Maybe you could go, that's great, Luna. Have you thought about this? We don't have an audio engineer, and you're a programmer. Do you want to kind of have a look at audio engineer and bring that information in? Another way is training courses. This doesn't have to be you as a studio or an organization paying to go to any sort of higher learning. It could be Luna going, I was on a forum or Reddit and they showed me a YouTube link to 8 hours worth of tutorials. Now I could say to Luna, yeah, that's great, go see it in your own time. Or I could find 8 hours in a month for Luna to watch those YouTubes and bring that knowledge into the studio and the team. What about additional responsibility for mentorship? Mentorship is different to leadership. Mentorship is about bringing that expertise and helping others through those things that Luna has already done or has a very active interest in. This can be manifested as rubber ducking, maybe peer programming, art reviews, peer reviews, all those sort of things fall under this mentorship. But can we buddy Luna up with someone else on the team who would benefit from her expertise and her experience that would also develop those skills for Luna? And then as an organization, is there a new area of our game that we just need someone to spend time to understand, a new feature that we've seen, maybe another game in the industry that we've gone, that's cool, we want to do that, but our version of that. Let's talk to Luna and say, can you do a competitor breakdown? What is the new skill or new knowledge you can bring to the studio and the team? And empowerment of Luna as the subject matter expert. It's all well and good for Luna to go and learn these things and bring that knowledge to us. But then if I, as a team leader or studio manager, are the one who's always answering questions about it, that doesn't help Luna. It makes Luna essentially fetching things for me to benefit from. So whenever I'm asked a question that Luna knows better than me, I'm saying, just go ask Luna. And make sure that that isn't just a private sort of conversation, but it's publicly acknowledged as well. If you have a Slack with everybody in it, or regular stand-ups, say, hey, Luna's looking at this new feature. Any questions, please go see Luna. Now, growing deep is the third and final growing style I'd like to discuss. This I like to call the fertilizer style. It is not all about excrement. Fertilizer is about giving important nutrients to the ground. It needs to be at specific times and be specifically tailored to the plant that you're growing. It needs to be monitored and revisited over and over. And why the roots? Roots anchor the plant to the soil. It keeps a plant stable, and it can help a plant survive through difficult times. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but maybe roots in your studio is a very good thing if you are expecting any difficult times. So the pros, it builds longer-term belonging, and growth in the roots benefits all the other growth types because it is that strong base. Some cons, it is more dynamic changes to commit to an action. It is the most dynamic that can change because of the circumstances that you're in. And for studio managers or team leaders, it has more overhead for the leaders and management because you're basically carrying that load. So this is Sammy. Sammy is a great team member. Love to have Sammy. Want to keep him around. And Sammy comes to me and says, I'm happy, but I want to feel more a part of what's going on. I'd like to feel more agency in what I do and be more aware of what things are happening. So, what can we work with Sammy on? Connection to team. Talk with Sammy about what areas they do feel a part of. Nurture that, encourage that. Importantly, ask what areas they want to be more a part of. Perhaps it's a designer who doesn't understand how engineers make the features they're asking for. They want to be in those code reviews. Maybe it's something as simple as, hey, there's this casual chat, can we make this into a formal meeting? That's an option. Or the opposite, a formal meeting that can just be run by the team as an ad hoc discussion. And then there's the connection to studio and business. Talk to Sammy about what they want more transparency on, and maybe identify ways Sammy can contribute questions or key areas for the team that they may know. The Sammys are the ones who can speak for the team when they're speaking for themselves. A lot of the questions that Sammy has, the rest of the team probably has as well. As an organization, what can we do? Business transparency. What are things about the business we can share with them? Can we share our quarterly financials? Is this something that we feel confident in and we want to share the good times and the bad with our team? What areas that we can include the team in making decisions? What does that look like? What level of impact does that look like? And all of this is an ongoing discussion that is going to be tailored to you and your team. So I'm providing questions here for you to ask yourselves, ask your team, and ask your organization and studio. Now this one that I clicked the button a little bit early with just a thumb twitch, ownership of work. Can you offer team members copyright or certain usage of their work? Particularly if a project is shelved or cancelled. A lot of stories of, I worked on a game I can't talk to you about or share any of the cool work that I did plague our industry. What can the team own rights to? And what rights of usage do they have? Can we look at alternate studio models? What about employee share options and programs? What about co-ops, where everybody has an equal share in the success and failure of your studio? All of these things are questions that I'd like us to consider, both for ourselves and for us as game developers with your own team. No answer is going to be right except for the answers you find yourselves. So the key takeaways again. Growth is a part of retention and keeping people in this industry, and importantly for you right now, in your company, or your team, or you wanting to make games. Growth is about building relationships. You have to have that trust and communication, and you need to maintain it over time. And think of the 3 different ways of growing. Grow up, grow out, and grow deep. Thank you very much.
So you mentioned that sometimes people don't necessarily know exactly what might be good or like how they can grow. How do you help them find out what would be right for them?
Yeah, good question. The main thing is talk with them. The thing that I ask all game devs to do at least once a year, if not twice a year, why do I make games? Why am I doing this? And that answer can lead the conversation with your team to find why they are making games and what excites them about it, what they're interested in from a professional standpoint, and that's the starting point for those conversations to find out what actually could be a good motivator or goal for them to achieve based on their interests and heart.
What are your thoughts on people that would be well placed to grow into leadership positions but don't want it?
Yeah, great question. That kind of leads into the delineation there of leadership and mentorship. Leadership isn't just leading people. It can be a thought leader. It can be an experienced learner and bringer into the studio. So leadership can take a lot of forms, and that's why, you know, when you're people who are progressing in their career and you identify the skills in those conversations, I've had people say, I don't want to manage people. And then it's a case of, okay, cool, let's look at growing out. What are ways that we can utilize your skills? I can see this in you. And more often than not, I'd probably say about 4 out of 5 times, those people will eventually understand that leadership is more than just leading people, and sometimes even step up into those people approving leave, doing the one-to-one sort of thing. But yeah, make sure that there's a difference between leadership and mentorship in that sort of growth pattern that you set up.